Hey everybody, it's been a minute since I posted a video. I apologize for my blaze orange. Today's the last day of the Utah elk hunt, and so I'm just trying to make the best of the last few remaining hours I've got today, but it is middle of the day, so it is pretty slow. Wanted to post up a video, one, get you some footage of the truck, and I also had a few questions in the comments that I wanted to address on the video with the truck. There were really a few main items. One, somebody had a question on some more detail about the ARB air lockers. So I'll show you the mounting bracket and the hoses I've run and how I've run them. Also had a few comments on what motor I'm running. I went over it a little bit in the walkthrough video, but I actually want to go into some more detail about why I am going to stay with the motor that's in it. And then we will do a little bit of story time. I had somebody ask why I chose this F150 platform for my off-roading vehicle. To me, it's kind of an interesting story. Some of you might find it really boring, but maybe some of you will like it. So we'll do some story time and get you some footage of the truck during this very unproductive hunt for me. I've been out here for 7 or 8 days, and we've seen a couple cows, seen a few moose, which is awesome, but no bull elk. All right, let's take a look at this ARB locker and some of the lines that I've ran. You can tell the truck used to be red, and don't mind my absolute mess of wires. But here is my compressor. This is a custom mount that I had to build. Typically they would put them right on top of the fender. But when I upgraded this compressor, it was heavier and it started to make the fender sag a little bit. So I wish I could point to a link or tell you where to buy one of these, but I made this bracket, and it's all tied in that way. And then I've got a quick disconnect air hose. Typically I have a cover for that, but I'm not sure where it went. Now, what I do want to point out is the lines that I use. So I will put a link for these. I believe these are called push lock. They are awesome. I don't even know what to call them. I don't know how they use them. I had somebody tell me about them. They're an airline, but they are extremely flexible but extremely stiff. So here's what's really cool about these lines. We can see here, it's hard to see the other one. There's the other one right there. That's running to the rear. This one's running to the front. But what is really neat about those lines is I have been running those on this truck for about, well, that's pretty dirty there, but that's the line right there. But I have been running these on this truck for almost 20 years. And I'll explain why so long. They were on a different F150 build that I started with, and that's part of the story time we'll do in a minute. But those lines have been on there for almost 20 years. There is no cracking. I have never once had a leak. I've never had a failure. They are still in fabulous condition. The heat, the cold, anything we've put them through, these have been fantastic. I'll drop a link down, but if you were going to run your own system or even have a shop run it, I would recommend them over hardline. I'd way recommend them over the plastic line that you get with the ARB compressors. My brother-in-law, they're okay. He's been running them for almost as long, but I think he has had several occasions where they'll get to a point where they get old, brittle, and crack. routing them, I don't think we need to go into a lot of detail. It's not rocket science in the sense that if I figured it out, most people can. I just routed this down to the front, along there and down to the front axle. The second one routes down through the let's see, the motor. It's actually right here, and then it runs down along my frame, and then over to that rear pumpkin. So I'll leave the links for that, but the hoses are what I want you to pay attention to. Just absolutely fantastic. I'll also put some links to the actual locker that I have in my differentials. Keep in mind, if you are going to run the 44 like I am, there are two size lockers. One is for the smaller carrier, and I can't remember. I think it's 410 and lower is one size, and then anything above 410 is going to be a different locker. I could be wrong. That might be 456. I'll correct it when I edit the video and drop a link down. So you'll want to pay attention to that. And then I will drop a part number for my rear axle, but that is a Dana 60. So unless you're doing an axle swap with the same axle that I did, the information won't be super helpful to you. Now, yes, if you are going to use this as a truck in any capacity, when it comes to towing, having heavy loads in the bed, I would agree. The 5.0 is, it's very underpowered. I will say, I had a truck before this, same year. It was really the exact same truck, just it had the 5.8 in it. Here's what I will tell you. With the years that I'm running, and the axles, I don't tell a big difference between the 5.8 and the 5.0. The reason I say that is I was worried when I got rid of that other truck, when I was losing the 5.8 and going to the 5.0. I was worried that I was going to lose a lot of power. I really didn't. I didn't lose that much power. Now keep in mind, some of you might be going, yeah, right, or maybe you had a different experience, but you have to keep in mind, I love the 5.0 because I'm not pulling anything. At most, you'll see a little adventure trailer on the back of this, or a four-wheeler trailer with a few four-wheelers on it. My loads that I carry are super light. So it just isn't used like a truck typically is. I don't need the extra torque. And the 5.0 actually handles, it's so low geared, this 5.0 handles because it's a shorter stroke. The 5.8 and the 5.0, I'm oversimplifying this, but they're essentially the same block. The 5.8 is just a longer stroke. But with the shorter stroke of this 5.0, it actually handles the lower gears a lot better at freeway speeds. That 5.8 with the 488 gears and the 35-inch tires, when you got on the freeway, it just did not like to be revved higher than it wanted to be. This 5.0 handles it way better. So that's what I wanted to kind of explain, is I don't think anybody's wrong saying, hey, drop a bigger motor, or you need more horsepower. You're not wrong, but just for some context, I'm not looking for a lot of horsepower. I use this truck just creeping along in the hills like this, and my main concern is actually fuel mileage. So I won't be going to a bigger motor. I am going to make this motor more efficient, but I'm not going to go to a bigger one because I'm just creeping around in the hills really slow. We use this truck like a Jeep. Now, you will notice I am running the BBK, I believe it's the 56 millimeter throttle body. I think that's what it is. They have two sizes. I did do the smaller one. I am running an AFE dry filter on here. I do not run it as a cold air intake. One, I didn't notice a lot of difference in power or mileage, and with the way we use it where it's very dusty, muddy, like this bay is always getting really dirty, I did not want an open filter. And if you're not doing a high horsepower build, the CFM that you get out of this is just fine. What I do plan on doing is there is a kit for these trucks, and this is down the road, but you can, I can't remember the model, but you can, with an adapter plate, bolt up the 6-speed transmission out of the 2014 year F150s. So I am going to go to a 6-speed transmission. It is just as expensive as doing a motor build, but I am 100% sold that gears in your transmission outweigh how valuable horsepower is. And that's why you'll see modern vehicles, they're getting away with putting smaller and smaller motors in them because they're going to 8, 9, and 10 speed transmissions, and it is magical what they do. So I am going to go to a 6-speed transmission down the road, and then once I do that, I am going to do a refresh on this motor. It is going to get the AFE, so the airflow research 165 heads, and I will do a mild, I think they call it an RV cam, while I do the water pump and the timing chain and everything. But according to AFR, I should get, they claim 100 horsepower and around 80 pounds of torque. Let's just say realistically I'll get 80 horsepower and somewhere around 60 to 70 foot-pounds of torque. But if I can get that much power out of that motor, keep in mind it only produces around 200 horsepower and like, I can't remember, 250, 270. Somebody can correct me, it is not a lot. But so if I can increase those numbers by around 80 each, that's a huge improvement, and then pair that with a 6-speed transmission. I actually think this truck will do phenomenally and get great gas mileage. All right, now for story time. So like I mentioned, somebody had asked me why I chose this 1995 F150 as an off-roading platform. And the answer is I didn't choose it. It chose me. That was stupid, but I didn't choose it. Back in 2000 or 2001, my dad bought a red 1995 F150 regular cab long box to use as a hunting truck. And it was 100% stock when he bought it. It was really, back then it was only 5 or 6 years old. 6 years old. So it was fairly new, really good condition. It was 4-wheel drive, and that was it. I think he bought it from an older gentleman that used it to pull a camp trailer back and forth. But we don't believe it ever saw off-road. And so, and my dad and I we were not into off-roading at all, other than I grew up hunting and we used a truck on on trails, right? But not really off-roading for the sake of off-roading. So we used that truck, and I just started to develop wonderful memories with my dad in that truck. Like, we went everywhere together, and it was always in that truck. And then the off-roading bug kind of it bit us in the form of my brother-in-law. You'll see him in a few of our videos. He's got the black, I think it's a 2001 Jeep Cherokee running 35s, but he was into off-roading, and he would go down, he would take us to Moab in his Jeep. But anyway, we started to make modifications to that red Ford. I think the very first thing my dad did was, we had 31-inch tires on it. We didn't do a lift. He did do 4 56 gears and an ARB locker in the front and an Eaton posit traction in the rear. And we used it on hunting, still not a lot of off-roading trips, but then the truck just slowly progressed, and before we knew it, we had a Skyjacker 6-inch lift and 35s. And man, we started to go to Moab, again, just building memories. I wasn't even old enough to drive just yet, and just loved going everywhere with my dad in that truck. And then time went on, we broke axles, we broke stuff. That Skyjacker lift, the front springs were, I don't know why they did it, but they were rated at like 600 or 700 inch-pounds. And man, that thing rode horrible, just horrible, but we tolerated it. We didn't know. Everybody that we talked to, and this goes, anybody watching, don't give advice if you don't actually know. But the things we hated on that truck were that it rode like an iron tank with that lift kit. Everybody told us that there really wasn't anything that could be done. That's just how trucks ride. And then the second was the steering was just horrible once we lifted it. Again, it was in and out of shops my whole childhood. My dad, it was just driving him crazy. We could never get it to steer how it was. And again, everybody, all the shops, because I think it was just because they couldn't fix it or they didn't know, but instead of saying, hey, we don't know, they would tell us that's just how it is. Well, you've lifted your truck, so you can't fix it. So then fast forward, we kept that truck for years and years and years, and then I had eventually got married, and we had one kid, and my dad was ready to get a new truck. He bought another 2017 F150, and he ended up selling me that 95 Ford. And then I started to make kind of more modifications. We had one kid, and it was a single cab, so our one kid and my wife, we fit in there just fine. But then as I started to research different companies that make lift kits, I really started to get into the suspension. I started calling around, found out that ProComp, their spring rate is, depending on which lift you get, like 420 to 450 inch-pounds. So I swapped those springs out. I put their leaf springs on the rear. They ride phenomenally better. And then I paired it with some shocks from AccuTune. And I went over that in my other video, but the thing rides like a Cadillac. Actually now, versus the Jeeps, when we go to Moab, people prefer to ride in this truck when it comes to comfort. So if any of those shops are listening, don't be lazy. And I think the problem is it was just all they knew was off the shelf bolt-on stuff, and they had never done any research. But that's my point. I'm not upset because they didn't know. I'm upset because they thought they knew everything and then gave us advice based on that. So that sucked. And then I also found out that on these trucks, the steering, the tie rod ends have to be at the exact same angle as your as the I-beams, the traction beams. So I did an overknuckle kit and got a different drop pitman arm. Now I'm sitting on this truck, it's 5.5, almost 6 inches of lift, and it steers like it did when it was stock. So it was another one of those, it wasn't that they should have known, but they just assumed that they knew everything, so, or they couldn't fix it. Shops were just telling us it can't be aligned because that's just how it is. So that was also wrong. So anyway, the reason I feel like I've gotten way off on a tangent, but our family was growing. We had the single cab, and now we didn't fit. So it was time to retire that F-150 and get another vehicle. And I was entirely ready to look into other off-roading rigs. But I did have a sentimental attachment to this body style of Ford. Like, I just loved it. Loved the interior. I loved how it looked. I think it's a tough looking truck, but it's got the rounder lines, so I think it still kind of has a hint of a modern look, but still old school. And I just grew up with it. All my memories of camping and hunting were in that truck with my dad. 20 years of them. But then what happened is I've got 4 kids and a wife and a dog, and we go camping a lot. So we always have to pile in. So then all of a sudden I started looking into replacing it with a Jeep, because Jeeps are designed really well for off-road. It doesn't take a lot to get them really capable. Maybe I was going to find like a Rubicon and go from there. But then, one, we don't all fit in there. I need to seat 6. So the Jeep was ruled out. And then I looked into, okay, well, what vehicles can seat 6? You've got the Excursion. I ruled that out really quick because it is just so heavy. Even with the gas motors, those Excursions were, you're upward towards, I might be off on this, but you're around 8,000 pounds. You get a diesel, you're 9,000 pounds. And then if you start adding roll bars and tire carriers and lights and rock rails, I think there was one guy on YouTube, they did like an Overlander Excursion. It was a really cool build on 37s and Kings, but they weighed it and they were like 11,000 pounds or something like that. It was unreal. And we do spend some time in the sand. I think the lighter vehicle it just has an advantage in most cases. Sometimes that weight helps you. I totally get that. So I ruled out the Excursion, and then I started to think, well, I need a bed. So then I was kind of stuck with the truck. But then the new trucks, and this might upset some people, and I don't mean to, but they with the way they design the independent front suspension now, the F-150s, Dodge, it doesn't matter, Tacoma, any of those trucks, they just don't do as well when it comes to flex with the front end and rock crawling. You guys can argue with me and maybe make a point, but man, in my 20 years with this twin traction beam setup, because it is independent front suspension, but my arms are 2 and 3 times longer than like the way it's designed. It scissors like a Baja truck. So I get, for an independent front suspension vehicle, I get I think a really amazing amount of flex. So what's funny is I went through this list trying to find another vehicle, and everything just kept weeding itself out. Now this year of Dodges, the 90s Dodges did have a solid front axle. That could have been an option, but nothing against the Dodges, but I love the 90s Ford look way better. I like the interior better. And then if I was going from one old truck to another old truck, it didn't make sense to start with a rig that I really didn't know anything about. Over the last 20 years, I have had this truck apart and together every inch of it, or at least that red one, the single cab, and I was just very familiar with it. So I went from this situation where I wanted to keep it for sentimental reasons, but then when I actually started to check the boxes of what I needed in an off-road rig, I can't think of another one that would fit the bill this well. It's light. This truck is 5,400 pounds. I've got a bed, and I need the bed. 100% I need it the way I use it. It will fit 6 of us comfortably. My kids aren't big. My oldest is 10, so they fit in the back here. Amazing. I love that this truck is not overly electronic. It's all analog. So this truck just kept, or at least that year of truck kept checking all the boxes. So what I did was I bought another truck. This was the one I'm in right now. It was a junkyard find. Let's see here. Might be lost. Anyway, it was a junkyard find, didn't run. It was in pretty rough condition, so I bought it, stripped it down, and then started to pull all the good parts off of the old truck, and then put them on this truck. And before I knew it, I had a whole other truck. Now it's an extended cab short bed, so the exact same wheelbase, and I just love it. I will just keep adding on to this. I'll keep restoring it. I'll keep fixing it. I can't see myself getting another rig anytime soon. So that was probably a really long story. Sorry if I bored you, but it was just interesting how this truck kind of fell into my lap, because I didn't actively go choose this truck to build, but it is something that fits my needs and that I love. I got up here to hunt this morning in a good open clearing, and this cloud rolled in, and I cannot see 50 feet in front of me. I don't even know where the truck is right now, so hopefully it clears up in a little while. Okay, this storm just keeps getting crazier. Okay, don't look that way. Ooh. Still got like a mile to go. This is crazy. On the truck. This is the edge of a huge cliff. Huge. Like probably close to 600, 700, 800 feet. Back to the truck. It's very cold. I'm gonna get back to camp. Alright, when I drove in this morning, there was no snow and no moisture on the ground at all. And I've got like, I think this trail back to camp is almost an hour and a half without any snow. So this might be interesting. right, everybody, the sun is going down, and this was a dud this season for me on the Elkhart. I did have a lot of fun camping, got some good wheeling in, and I'm gonna head home. We got a little bit of trail left. Hopefully we can catch some night action for you. You can see how those lights work. But thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good one.